think everybody had a little more expectation around Munster rugby for this season. Van Gran, he got a lot of grief off pundits, off fans, especially the Munster fans. They weren't happy with the way that he was trying to play the game. And maybe the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season has showed that the group of players that he was working with probably, aren't world beaters like everybody maybe thinks they are, and it's going to take time. And Johan van Gran probably understood that, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it was an easy decision for him to head on to Bath, because he knew it was going to take a bit more time to get this Munster side together, to get them going, to get them playing the type of rugby that's going to get them back to possibly winning silverware. And Graham Rowntree obviously is taking on the head role, supported by Prendergast, Dennis Leamy, Andy Kiriakou, and a few others in there, of course, too. But the worrying thing with Munster is that they've actually got worse as the season has went on instead of better. And watching the Connacht versus Munster game very precisely, trying to get a gauge of the patterns that they're trying to play, they got absolutely dominated up front. And if you're lacking confidence, if you're lacking a little bit of belief, you're lacking a little bit of direction, your right half's not getting the game flowing, that's fine. But one thing that cannot be questioned ever again, whether you're wearing an Ulster jersey, Munster jersey, whoever it may be, is the physicality and aggression that you bring to a rugby match. And Munster rugby just haven't had that this season. I think, the edge that you associate Munster rugby having over the last 15 years, even when they didn't play well, they get stuck into teams. They made life really, really difficult. And they haven't, it's been let's call it how it is. Connacht probably should have won that game by another 7 or 8 points if Cardi had knocked the kicks over. Rarely were they challenged. The game with the Dragons a couple of weeks ago, rarely were they challenged apart from a maul drive and a try by, I think it was Stephen Archer. So this is a huge problem. The only saving grace for Munster rugby is that they have a significant amount of players to bring back in. Those being attacking quality players: Keith Earls, Andrew Conway, Shane Daly, Mike Haley, to name a couple. Simon Zebo as well. And, I think Carberry was maybe playing fullback because of injuries more than actually, where Graham Rowntree wanted him to play. And I think hopefully going forward with the emerging Ireland guys coming back in and, having a few more bodies on the ground, that Joey Carberry will be reinstated as the Munster right half. Because he's only got a couple of games now until the autumn international, so he's really got to get stuck in there. But Munster rugby are in a difficult position at the minute. They are. There's no doubt about that. Graham Rowntree will admit that the start of the season hasn't went the way he was probably hoping, and all the Munster fans were hoping. But as an onlooker watching Munster, they're not a nice team to watch at the minute. They're not playing attractive rugby. They're not making line breaks. They're not putting in huge tackles. They're not dominating up front. They're not making the rock and maul situations a complete mess and giving the referee hard decisions to make like they've done so many times in the past. So yeah, I'm not saying it's back to the drawing board. I think, Donny, week one when we were coming on this show, I was like, well, watch out for Munster. Some of the serious quality players, Fekatoa and RG Snyman to come back fit, Big Coombs at number 8 to come back fit, Peter O'Mahony, O'Donoghue. You can just keep rhyming off the names, but if you're not playing together, then forget about it. So it's a huge, huge game this weekend for Munster to try and get some momentum into their season. Is he a similar type of player to Stuart McCluskey? Possibly a little bit. He doesn't have the speed. I think that might be work against them a little bit when it comes to international rugby. Bundy Aki's going to be out with a ban, obviously, so that opens the door for either Stuart McCluskey or Luke Marshall. Luke Marshall's a handful of caps. Scored a brace there at the weekend against the Ospreys. Has been played 80 minutes once again. A couple of ACL injuries. He was out for a number of months with HIAs and concussions. So like we all know that he's got the ability. It's just, can he get the game time on a consistent basis to pick up a run of form? And I think he's done that in the opening 4 games of the season. He's been one of Ulster's best players, man of the match there at the weekend also. And that's all he's just got to keep on doing. Stuart McCluskey actually went off injured 5 minutes into the second half. Looked like he picked up a dead leg, something like that. So, and James Humes here ready to come back and get stuck back in there. So it's going to be tough for him. But I think Luke Marshall is, going to be very proud of what he's achieved over the last season or two, because, even rewind the clock back about a year and a half ago, you had all these other players that were sort of in a similar position to him, signing on new 1-year deals. John Cooney, Jordy Murphy, I think Stuart McCluskey, a couple of Craig Gilroy, all just signing these 1-year extensions because Ulster Rugby weren't really sure what they're going to be doing with them, and there was nothing about Luke Marshall, and that's because of his injury record. I think they were like, if you can make it to the end of the season, then we might offer you something for next year. And he made it to the end of the season, and he's obviously had a really good preseason. He's an absolute tank of a bloke. We call him the Seal because he's just solid. I'm not going to say blubber. I think Seals are a lot stronger than that, but he's a solid bloke, and he punches way above his weight. And it'll be interesting to see if he gets into a squad during the autumn internationals, because I think he's thoroughly deserves it on his form so far this season. Yeah, I think he can get away with more or less anything when he's on the rugby pitch. Do you know what? Watching the Sharks game, I think every point that he raised was valid. And I know people were talking about the Ryan Baird incident where there was the kick across and Ryan Baird fell awkwardly on his back / neck and had to go off injured. Like, for me, I thought that was really dangerous play, and that was easily a yellow / red card. And it was just, the referee was like, "Oh, it's a coming together, it's an incident, the rugby incident," or whatever it was. And Johnny was like, "No, hold on a second, it's not. He ran into him. Like, that can't be. You can't do that on a rugby pitch." And then he kept going and going, and there was a few other times during the match. I think that the Sharks were getting very frustrated. But one thing about Leinster rugby, and I suppose Ireland as well, is that everything goes through Johnny Sexton. So, like, if you're playing Munster 5 or 6 years ago, you had Paul O'Connell in the referees here, you had Ronan O'Gara in the referees here. You maybe one of the back three as well, always pitching in and chirping up. If you had Alan Quinlan, you never got a break because he was just talking to the rugby every time he got an opportunity. Talking to the referee every time he got an opportunity. So yeah, I think everything goes through Johnny Sexton, and therefore it sounds like he's being very pernickety, coming across forceful to the referees, trying to influence their decisions. Is it putting a negative slash on the game? Possibly, from a viewer point of view. Like, Joe Blogs tuning in to watch a rugby match is hearing Johnny Sexton bark at the referee for every stoppage of play about a decision here, a decision there. And yeah, we all want to see it being cut out. I was listening to BBC Radio 5 Live the other day, and it was about football leagues in England, about giving the referees just abuse after abuse, and they've actually stopped games this weekend at underage level because of the amount of criticism and abuse that referees have taken. And something that about rugby that we pride ourselves on is the respect that we show the officials. And I think there is a line there, and going forward, all we want to see, there's no problem with questioning the decision, no problem whatsoever, but it's doing it in the right manner, making sure that you come across the right way, because everything these days is picked up on the ref mic. Everything can be put onto social media within 5 seconds of it being said, and then all of a sudden you have a difference of opinion, and the narrative can go one or two ways. And I think Johnny Sexton, after the last weekend's game, a lot of South African fans weren't happy with the way he came across on the referee's mic on numerous occasions. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fine line throughout the season, but I don't think Johnny Sexton's going to change much. He's got so much experience. He's so well respected. He's obviously a quality player. He played brilliant. By the way, he played bloody brilliant against the Sharks. He was outstanding. Controlled the game very well. One of the negatives, I think, from Leinster this season is the amount of points that they're shipping. Obviously conceded a good few in round one against Zebre. Conceded Another bag full there, 5 tries against Sharks. So that's an area of the game that they're going to have to tighten up. But their attack and play, led by Johnny Sexton, I'm sure all the boys are walking out of the change room before the first whistle of the match. When Johnny leads a team out, there's a lot of confidence amongst everyone. And somebody who's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, it just fills the team full of confidence. So yeah, Johnny's a serial winner. I think as well that there's some things that, if Johnny threw you a bad pass and around your knees and you didn't catch it and you knocked it on, he would be absolutely pissed off, even though it wasn't a good pass. Wouldn't be his fault. He'd be like, "Why did you not catch that?" Where if he threw a pass and it bounced in front of you, he'd maybe hold his hands up and say, "Oh, sorry about that." But 9 out of 10 times, he expects the players around him to be just on it all the time, and that's in training, that's on the pitch, and the standards that he sets is just infectious, and I think that's why Leinster are tipped to be up there in the URC again this season, and of course the European Cup. So yeah, Johnny Sexton can keep barking all he wants at referees, but one thing you can't take away from him is the quality and the player that he is.